And I got a new camera. Also, someone's cooking in the background, so forgive the extra sound. Hey, this is Ramon, channel is Alpha 4. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We are going to be doing a book review of Anna Karenina. Now, this is not just a review. This is also a discussion. So please comment down below and give me those thumbs up and subscribe and share. But I want to see you guys talk to me. I want to see you guys have a discussion, and I want to hear what you guys think of this book. If you've read this book, tell me about it. Anyway, here we go. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Richard Perver and Larissa Balanowski, and also the Audible book version translated by Constance Garnett and performed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Everybody thinks they know the beginning of Anna Karenina, and everybody thinks they know the end. But most people's assumptions would be wrong. Most people will tell you that Anna Karenina begins with, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. That's what they'll tell you the beginning is. And everybody will tell you that the ending is the tragic scene at the train station. But the truth is, that's not the actual beginning. It actually begins on the previous page with, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And it ends long after the death of a certain character. Now, I realize this is a story that is well known. There are movies about it. People who haven't read it probably think they know it. But still, I'm going to try to tread lightly on the true spoilers for those who haven't read it so that they can enjoy it in full. To put it simply, most people just haven't read the book. They've only watched the movie or a TV series. And that isn't to say that I'm disrespecting the movies or the TV series. I thought the 2012 Keira Knightley vehicle was a very enjoyable movie. The 1997 Sophie Massaro movie was okay. I know I'm not saying that name correctly. And I have vague memories of the 1985 made-for-TV movie. Now that being said, there was also a BBC miniseries that was in black and white that I thoroughly enjoyed, that I was actually watching alongside my readings. Unfortunately, it got taken down from the digital platform I was watching it on before I finished the book, as it's a very long book. I mean, it's almost 1,000 pages, people. It's actually 817 pages in this version. So it is a long book, and these are big pages. When it comes to the book itself, I found it thoroughly engrossing. But that is not to say there's not a dull portion, because there really is. Part 5 to Part 7, that is pages 437 through 768, is utterly boring. That is not a knock on the translation, specifically the translation that I read. The Richard and Larissa translation was beautiful. And of the versions that I looked at, because I looked at multiple versions at the bookstore and I read multiple samples before I chose this particular translation, this one was the smoothest and the most enjoyable. But for those 3 volumes, for those 3 sections in the middle, I had to go with an Audible book to get through it. It was just a slog to get through. Now that being said, the Garnet translation was nowhere near as nice as the Larissa and Richard translation. Even though the Audible translation was not as well done, Maggie Gyllenhaal's performance was great. It can get you through the driest chapters and the roughest translations. For those that don't know what the book is about, let me give you a kind of what I thought Anna Karenina was truly about. It was the story of 4 intertwined families and how they were happy in like ways, but unhappy in unique ways. The 4 main characters, in my estimation, were as follows: Levin, Kitty, Anna, and Vronsky, in that order. And to be honest, Anna Karenina is not the main focus of the story. So it's odd she is the title character. Really, it is the story of Levin. But Anna is the driving force of all the action that happens in the story. And each of the 4 main characters has their own supporting cast of major and minor characters. The story opens up with Stiva, Anna's brother and the husband to Dolly. He thinks of himself as a player And in all truthfulness, he is kind of a philanderer. And while in the beginning of the book, he is a character of great success and great drive, by the middle of the book, he's kind of a loser, and he's actually dependent on Levin for survival. While at the end of the book, he just kind of seems to fade away into the background of the story. The next character that gets dealt with in the book is Dolly, the wife of Stiva. And she is a woman who is being cheated on. She is devastated and she needs help. And the person she gets help from is Anna. And Anna gives her all the wrong advice, but in just the right way, and convinces her to do what is the right thing socially, which would work narratively if Dolly continued to be the kind of character that was in that situation throughout the book. But instead, her character changes and becomes the conscience of the four main characters. At one point or another throughout the book, she becomes the conscience for Kitty, the conscience for Anna, the conscience for Levin. And that is a very interesting twist to a character who begins as the character in moral crisis. The next character that gets dealt with in the narrative, and honestly, one of the characters that gets the most attention in the book, is Kitty. If Anna is the main female villain, then Kitty is the main female protagonist. And if Levin is the main male hero, then Vronsky is the main male villain of this piece. But that is not exactly how the story breaks down. Each character gets a chance to be very good and very evil. It's how they react to those opportunities that makes the characters interesting. Kitty is a character that begins complicated and compromised and becomes more complex throughout the story until she gets to her own kind of climax. But as the narrative wears on, she ends up being overly simplified and becomes of much less import by the last 2 chapters of the story, where she becomes a wife, then a mother, and then simply a background character by part 8. The next character to get dealt with in the story is that of Anna. Now, Anna is a villainess. She starts off conniving and mischievous, and her brother share many of the same negative traits, something that unfortunately is not explored in Kitty. But that is not the point. Anna is a woman who is bored with life. She has a husband who loves her, who is dutiful, but he doesn't turn her on anymore. And there is some implication that maybe he never really did. That what she loved about him was his nobility and his sense of dignity. And once that becomes boring to her, his goodness is no longer an attraction. And that is a key component to what drives Anna. What drives Anna is her need for attention and love. She is a character driven by passion, depression, and obsession. And that obsession is focused on one character, although initially 2. That of Vronsky and her son. And it is that pull between those 2 characters and who she wants to love more that drives her insane and mad. That is not to say that she is the main character of the story, though. While she does work as the driving force for much of the action, she actually has very little screen time in the story. You'll spend much more time with Levin and with Kitty and with Vronsky than you ever will with Anna. Anna, you will get a deep sense of madness and sadness and obsession from. She makes everybody's lives worse because she is unable to choose, and she holds everyone still while they are trying to move forward. Put simply, she is a horrible person. Then we get to the true main character of the story, Levin, Konstantin Levin. He's a weightlifter, he's a philosopher, he's a farmer, he's a landowner, he's an aristocrat, but he hangs out with the peasants. He's a great guy. Now, there's some implication that Levin is actually based on Tolstoy, which could explain why the character gets so much attention and so much building up. He begins the story heartsick and in love with Kitty, who's in love with Vronsky. And He's a character of action. He makes decisions, but those decisions do not always work out. And when those decisions don't work out, he suffers. And in his suffering, he grows. He begins as an atheist and ends as a religious person. He goes through a whole journey. He is the character that gets the most development. I would say him and Kitty are the two characters that grow the most, and that Vronsky degenerates the most, while Anna just kind of degrades throughout the story and disintegrates into a suicidal mess by the last few chapters of the book. It is Levin's unrequited love that begins the story, while it is his love of his wife and child that ends the story, as he finds a love for God. And he starts to explore different theologies. He begins, after his heart is broken, he ends up getting into politics and political science, but by the end of the book, it's all religion for him. I feel that the two characters that get the worst service in film, Stiva is supposed to be a handsome, virile man, while Levin is supposed to be a great hunter and a great masculine man. Yet in the movies, Stiva is usually portrayed as an old buffoon, while Levin is usually portrayed as a lovesick, skinny man-child, which is too bad. The next character to get a lot of screen time would be Alexei, Anna's husband. Now, it's interesting because Alexei is also the first name of Vronsky. So there's an interesting dynamic there that never really gets explored. Alexei is a good man, and he wants to do good things, but he doesn't really make an impression in the book that's positive, which is sad, because all the traits that the writer gives him are positive, noble traits. Yet somehow he comes off as a minor character with wishy-washy morals, which, if you actually read the narrative, he doesn't have wishy-washy morals at all. He's a man of steel, which is very interesting, as opposed to Vronsky, who seems very strong throughout the book and yet has wishy-washy morals and is a man of rubber. The next character who should be highlighted is Nikolai. That is Levin's sickly brother, who he loves very much, yet they argue all the time. The most interesting scenes in the book take place with Nikolai. Nikolai is honestly the most interesting character. All the scenes with him and Levin are very dramatic, are very tense. They keep you interested throughout the story, and they are the most dynamic scenes in the book. The best dialogue, the best discussion happens when Nikolai is on the screen. He is probably the most interesting character in the story, even though he really does nothing. He's kind of a loser. But he has a noble heart, and he has a lot of good intentions. He kind of, think of the burnout from college. He just never really got it together. That's kind of who he is. And his life has kind of gone downhill, but there's something about him that's intriguing and scary and dangerous, and it works very well in the story. The next character I should mention is Masha. That is Nikolai's woman. And I say it that way because that's kind of how she's referred to in the book. She's not technically his wife, and she's supposed to be his caregiver, but really she loves him and she's loyal to him. Unfortunately, the book never gives her the screen time or the character development that she deserves, and that's kind of too bad. After Nikolai's death, she just kind of gets dropped. While Masha does not get the development she deserves, another side character, does. The character of Varenka, and she is the girl who helps Kitty find herself. Unfortunately, maybe because of the times of when this was written, Tolstoy makes it seem as if she's a bad guy for doing this, as if helping Kitty find herself and develop a character and develop a will of her own is somehow a bad thing. That's too bad, because Varenka is a great character, and she does get full development. She does get the spotlight. She gets a full story arc, and she even gets a happy ending. So that's actually kind of cool that this small side character does get the development she deserved, as she was an interesting character with interesting drives and her own motivations. I should mention Anna's son, because Anna's son is important, but Anna's son is just not very interesting, and only one scene does the character really get to shine. Well, then Tolstoy shows some development later on, but it doesn't really drive, it's not really a driving force in the story, although it is a driving force for Anna. But the last scene with the child never pays off with the mother, where the boy had grown up and moved past what the mother wanted to keep him as. But they never explore that theme. And then lastly, I should mention Sergei, Levin's older, arrogant brother, who is a writer. And I don't know if this is supposed to be a reflection of Tolstoy's real brother or brothers or a friend, or if this is supposed to be a reflection of what he fears about himself. But the character is arrogant, and throughout most of the story, he's just not very important. He's a very minor character. Like, only gets mentioned a few times. Then at the end, out of nowhere, after the big climax, suddenly he's a very important character and gets a lot of development very late in the game, and you learn a lot about him, but by that point you don't care because it's already toward the end of the book. Overall, I liked the book. And I found its deep philosophical, religious, and moral examinations engrossing and interesting. Yet, for all that was interesting in the book, there is a good chunk of it that is just boring and dull. But that is probably due to the nature of its initial release as part of an ongoing series in a magazine or digest, as parts 5 through 7 were what we would nowadays call filler. That being said, I would give this book a 7 out of 10, and I recommend it to anyone who's interested in either philosophy or religion, or just wants to read a great classic, specifically a great Russian classic. On the other hand, for the general audience, I can see why the films don't include all the minutiae and mundane life that is included in the book. This is a book of realism. Not ultra-realism, but realism. And for that, I enjoy it and I love it. But I can see how some people would not be able to tackle a story this mundane and this philosophical and thoughtful. Peace, like, and subscribe. Talk to you all later. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be doing more book reviews going forward. Talk to you later.